To check out all our products, go to MusicNomadCare.com.
So let's talk a little bit about neck relief. Neck relief is the amount of curvature that the neck has from front to back. If you imagine the strings are straight and the neck is curved underneath like a hammock, or it curves away from the strings, that is relief. If the neck is dead flat, it's exactly the same as the strings, then you would say that the neck has no relief. And if the neck is bent backwards so that it has a hump in the middle or is bowing up towards the strings, you would say that the neck has back bow. Now, why does a neck even need relief? Well, if you have a dead flat neck, you're going to have to raise your action height in order to create clearance for the string to vibrate. Just the physical reality of the guitar is you have a string that's oscillating. It's generally in an oval pattern. It's fixed on the ends. It's vibrating most in the middle. If you have a flat neck, you have to raise the bridge up in order to create clearance for that vibrating string. If you put a little bit of relief in the neck, you create a pocket for that string to have some clearance in order to vibrate without hitting the frets. So a little bit of relief will allow the instrument to have a much more even action height from the nut to the last fret. You don't want too much. You don't want a huge amount because then you have high action in the middle of the neck. You don't want too little because you can get buzzing in the low registers without having excessively high action. So the right amount of relief is really important for proper playability on any instrument. So in order to measure my neck relief, I'm going to use my MusicNomad pick capo and my truss rod gauge. So the pick capo is a cool little capo that fits over the E string, under the A string, and over the D, right at the first fret. And that's going to hold my E string down on the first fret so I don't have to fret it because we're going to take this measurement with the string fretted at the first fret. I'll use my truss rod gauge to measure the actual space between the 6th fret and the string. We have 3 gauges in the truss rod gauge set. One is for electric guitar, one is for acoustic guitar and bass, and one is for classical guitar. That's a 6/1000 of an inch thickness, 8/1000 and 10/1000 respectively. So you don't have anything more than what you need. The gauge is very clearly marked for what instrument it'll be used for. Additionally, on the handle, you have some instructions about how to actually use the gauge. If you forget, do I fret at the 12th fret? Do I use a capo? What do I do? All that's clearly marked on the gauge. And then on the other side of the handle is the touch rule for how to adjust your truss rod depending on what you find when you measure the relief. So it shows that if I measure my relief and I have no touch between the gauge and the string, I'm going to turn my truss rod clockwise to the right and tighten it to take relief out of the neck. If I have a very light touch, I'm good to go and I don't have to do anything. If I have a heavy touch, it's very hard to get the gauge between the string and the fret. I'm going to loosen my truss rod and put relief into the neck. So just some handy reminders to keep you on track as you're taking these measurements and making your adjustments. So I'm going to grab my 8/1000 of an inch gauge, which is for acoustic guitar. I'm going to put my guitar in the playing position. You always want to take your measurements in the playing position. Laying the guitar back on the cradle cube will flex the neck a little bit, and it will make your measurements not accurate whenever you are actually playing the guitar. So I'll put the guitar in the playing position. I've got my pick capo in. I'm going to fret at the 12th fret, and then I'm going to use my 8/1000 gauge, and I'm going to measure between the 6th fret and the low E string. And this has got what I would consider kind of a medium touch. It's a little too tight. So I'm going to loosen my truss rod just a bit and add relief to the neck till I have just the perfect light touch between the gauge and the string. So I will grab, Martin uses a 5mm truss rod. This is a MusicNomad 5mm wrench specifically for Martin guitar. This doesn't come in the 11-piece truss rod kit, but you can buy it separately. So I'm going to go ahead and put the truss rod wrench down into the truss rod nut, which is located in the sound hole under the fingerboard extension. Now you might wonder how a truss rod works. A truss rod is a metal rod that goes through the back of the neck. It is an anchor. On this guitar, it has an anchor towards the headstock end and a threaded nut on this end. Gibson is flipped around the other way. Fender could be either, depending, but it's either going to be a headstock adjust or a heel adjust. When you tighten the truss rod, it shortens the rod and it pulls the neck back against string tension. If you loosen the rod, it allows the rod to lengthen and it allows the strings to pull the neck up into more of a curve. So if you imagine the neck is flimsy, the strings are trying to pull it up, the truss rod's trying to pull it back. So tightening the truss rod, it goes back and flattens. Loosening the truss rod, it goes up to more relief. So I'm going to loosen this truss rod just a bit. So I'm going to go counterclockwise, just a hair. Pull that out. You want to be very careful whenever you're going in and out of the sound hole. You don't want to ding the wood on the edge of the sound hole with the wrench. It's easy not to, but it's easy to do it if you aren't paying attention. So just be careful there. Now that I've made that adjustment, I'm going to put the guitar back in the playing position, and I'm going to remeasure. And that is perfect. I mean, it's just barely touching the string. So I know I'm right at 8/1000 of an inch.
For detailed videos on how to use each gauge during the setup process, please visit MusicNomadCare.com for all our how-to videos.